you want to just give just a little bit of information about who you are, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure, sounds good. So I started investing in 2013, and my main strategy is the BRRRR strategy. So buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. It got me to 12 units today, and to the point now where I still do work full time, but before all this COVID stuff, having that conversation with my boss of, I'm either going to need to go down to part-time with you this year, or if you need, or I may retire. So who knows what's going to happen with all this economic stuff right now. I'm still working full-time. I'm working full-time from home now 4 days a week. But the reason that I wanted to do real estate investing was for the freedom and the ability to not have to work for 30 plus years. This is not a get rich quick thing. In the beginning, it feels really slow as you're getting your first, your second, your third. But over time, it's, one of those like exponential growth things. It just takes, it takes some time in the beginning. So I think, one of the things that helped me quite a bit is in the beginning, just to focus on a strategy and then focused on a market. So their first market was Brantford, and just really got to learn that quite well, made sure that it met a lot of the fundamentals. But when I first started all of this, like, I really had no clue what I was doing. I didn't even specifically pick Brantford. That's just essentially where Matt, my spouse, his family's from. And so his sister was our first tenant. And that's how we got into it. And we just ended up saving for the first down payment on the cheapest house that we could afford, which was a $129,000, 500 not even square feet house from the 1850s. Somehow it still stands today. But it taught us a lot. We've made tons of mistakes, the first couple years. First one is, renting to family or doing any business with family. Unfortunately, that didn't work out so well. But she's in her own, she's renting something else now. We asked her to move out. She did trash the place. We had to renovate it a second time, ironically. The reason that originally my spouse didn't want to get into real estate because he didn't want to have a tenant that trashes the place, and he didn't want to have a tenant that was always late, that we may or may not have to take to the board. So that's how we actually got started, ironically, with his sister. Now, we didn't have to take her to the board, but she definitely did trash. She did a number on the place.
Oh, really?
And, but now, looking back at it, so we had no clue what we were doing. And we rented it to her for like $720 at that time, plus utilities. Cause she's like, I'm like, what's your budget? And she's like, well, if we can keep it under 1,000, that's great. So we ended up agreeing to $720. Big mistake. We just came up with that. We didn't even look at checks. But, because of all of this, you learn and you build processes over time, and you have to make mistakes. Unfortunately, it doesn't, have to always be your own mistakes. You can maybe learn from the mistakes of others so you don't make their own. But we just decided to rent to her, and she was below market probably by $200 to $300 a month. And, fast forward to today, over time you build processes and you really understand what's happening. So we're getting $1,425 from a great tenant and his grandma. They live there. They take absolutely amazing care of the place. And that house we bought for $129,000, that we're getting $1,425 now for rent. Yeah. So, yes, we've made lots of mistakes in the beginning, but those mistakes have allowed us to really tighten up on our processes and our procedures so that we can actually, grow the direction we want, to have that freedom that we want.
Yeah, it's amazing. And especially I feel like it's good that you have like so many processes in place, or like a process in place, because especially with COVID right now, I don't know what your beliefs are, but I think we're going to be hitting a second wave of COVID, and I'm curious on what's going to happen. So then I guess to start off, that was interesting to know, what is your process for screening a tenant, like from beginning to end, beginning to getting them in?
Yeah. So probably after, so this here, I'm just going to back up a little bit. The second property, I found the tenant first. Talked to her for 3 months, really liked her. We found a house or two that we liked, and she picked the one that she wants to live in. We were able to do that back then. Third house, we found somebody on Kijiji. Her landlord was selling, and we ended up buying from her landlord and upped her rent. So the first three, we actually did tenants first, and then it just got a little more complicated. So then we really had to build a process over time. And the process that we have, you know, actually involves 5 different steps. I think a lot of the time, landlords are too eager to give the keys to the first tenant, first and last, and then they get bit. So one of the things that we do is that we remain anonymous until after step 2. So step 1 is like advertising on things like Kijiji, for example, and having a specific set of questions that we ask the tenant, and there's no phone number. I'm not leaving my name. This is why I like Kijiji, just because I can stay anonymous. There's other ways to advertise, of course, but my favorite is to stay anonymous because I can screen out a lot of people that don't meet all 5 questions. So if they decide to just answer one of the 5 questions, I'm not even responding to them. Like, there's a lot of people that get screened out of those Kijiji ads. If I don't like their answers, then I also don't even respond to them. And it's really good because you can't ever be accused of, you know, discriminating, because no one's ever going to accuse you of being disorganized or not answering, right? And so they don't know who you are. They're going to respond to an ad with those 5 questions. If they do, the ones that you do like, then I do to step 2, which is phone screening, which I have a list of questions that I ask them. And I talk to them about my processes, my procedures for how the next steps are going to go. I block my number during this call. If I don't like them, I'm not going to book a showing for that house. So if I don't like them, I essentially just let them know that I'm going to call them back with when the property is available. They don't have my number. I've only given them my first name. I won't call them back. The ones I do like at that point in time, I will book something to schedule. With COVID, it may be a virtual tour more so, and then an application. Once COVID is lifted, I will likely get them just to come, you know, within 20 minutes apart from each other. One family can wait outside, as an example. When they are physically there, I do more questions. I have an application. Everybody over 18 must fill out the application. Even if you have a child that's 18, they have to be on the lease. And then essentially there's a list of questions with the application that they answer. They send that into an email that does not have my last name. They send that into an email that I create. And then I will pick my top 2 to start screening. And unfortunately, a lot of people, what they do is they're like, oh, you want to see the property? Okay, sure. Here's the application. And then that's where they start. That's my 3rd step. Right? So
yeah, you have a lot of steps.
there's a lot of steps. And I think that's just important because it's really our only control that we have. As soon as those tenants are in, I mean, the LTB takes over and the RTA takes over, and you know, the ability for us to make anything work for us if we have a troubled tenant is going to take a long time. With the LTB being closed right now, you know, if it's going to reopen, say in September as an example, well, here's the thing, there's already about 55,000 cases that were going through the board. A process prior to COVID to get somebody, you know, that was not paying out took 7 months. Now you're probably looking at 12 to 18. So it's important to strengthen even some of these measures. So some of the things that I do ask for, obviously, is so I will pull their credit. I will call the past landlords, current landlords. I do need proof of income, pay stubs. I do need proof that they have money above first and last in the bank. And I do need proof that they've paid May, June, April, March, and I need to see that. And if they don't want to share it, that's fine. There's dozens of other tenants that can. I don't want to have a tenant that you know, decided not to pay, could not pay, but it shows that, you know, did not pay, but it shows that there was money in the bank. So that is going to be something. And then the other thing I let them know, and this is, you know, just be careful because this is not necessarily above board, but I will expect them to be able to at least make 3 times what the rent is. You're not technically supposed to have criteria like percentages, but depending on where the conversation goes on the phone screen, I'll just kind of let them know what my process is, and I'll spin it as, I don't want to strap you guys. We want to make sure our tenants are very comfortable in the place, and this is what we usually look for. So I look at three, if the rent is 2,000, I need their income to be 3 times that as gross. So then I go through all of that. I go through all the checks. Once that clears, I'll just pick my first 2. Because if I get 10 applications, who did I feel most comfortable with? Who did I communicating with the most? Who did I see as my tenant? I won't do all 10. I'll do the first 2. And then from there afterwards, I actually do an interview with them just to review all their questions and if there's any discrepancies, but also to talk to them about, how the lease signing is going to go, what happens if they have a maintenance, issue, what happens if they don't pay. So I want them to understand, like, every year I'm going to be raising the rents. Every year I'm going to, if you don't pay on the 2nd, you're getting an N4. It's a process. So like, it's important to just set that precedence up. So I will have a call with them on that. I will tell them I need them to get tenant insurance, put the utilities in their names. And then what I'll do is, once I do the interview, and you guys can do this on Zoom as well, it doesn't have to be in person. What I'll do is I'll send them a lease agreement with a 20-page addendum that they have to read through. And then at the lease signing, they've already read through it. I will collect first and last when I meet with them to sign the lease, and all of the addendum pages. So there is 5 steps. They can get screened out any of the steps, but I find that most of my screening out is done from the advertising part, Kijiji, or the phone part.
Yeah, I was gonna say those are probably the first 2, because already with your questions there, it kind of gives you probably enough information.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things to just be very careful of in times like this is just our tenants getting cash for keys right now to get out of their current place. So like, there might be some landlords, if a tenant just cannot pay and the landlord knows that the tenant will not be able to pay, they might have to go to the board and they're not getting paid for 12 to 18 months. Let's just say because the tenant is playing the system and he knows that she knows that they can. Well, there might be something called cash for keys, right? So a lot of landlords might say, why don't I give you $5,000, just leave, and I'll give you a great reference. So that concerns me, because there could be a lot of cash for keys and then tenants applying, using that money to go somewhere else, but they might not be able to pay. So this is why I need to see their statements where they went from and to for these months. And even in a year from now, I'm still going to be asking for those things for those months. And I'm going to be asking that as a question, as part of my questionnaire. I'm going to be asking that as when I call the past landlord or the current landlord, depending on who that is. And I'm going to be asking them as well. And I'm going to be telling them that I'm going to be specifically inspecting that.
Oh, wow. So what are you for your steps 1 and 2, what are your questions like? Like, is it a huge list or no, because you said it's 5 or something, right? Or
so
3?
my list of Kijiji questions. Yeah. So like, it could be anything that you want. It just shows that they can basically take, read to the end and take direction. But, it could be anything about, like, tell me a little bit about you and your family. B, it could be, do you any smokers? C could be types of pets and number of pets. 4 could be, how did you manage rental payment with the landlord during COVID times? Like, whatever questions that you want. You might have some that you prefer over others. And as long as like one of them is, how do you get in contact? So name and phone number, because you need to be contacting them. But essentially that, like, if they answer 1 or 2, I'm not, like, they can't follow directions. How are they going to follow directions when I need them to pay or to tell me about maintenance issues in a timely fashion? So just test number 1, right? If they don't answer, I would prefer to keep my units vacant. If I didn't find the right person right now, I'd keep it vacant for 2-3 months if you can, unless you find the right person. I know a lot of people are even asking, could you do more than first and last? If the tenant wants to do more than first and then last and they're okay with it, and you're more comfortable with that, you can take more than first and last. I don't know how many tenants are necessarily going to have that much in savings, but it could definitely help. But most important for me, I just want to know how they handled this whole time. I don't want anybody abusing the system and then thinking that they can come into one of our rental properties and do the same to us, because it's not going to happen.
Hey, Sarah.
Yeah. Hey.
Sorry, Diane, can I step in for a second?
Yeah, no, go ahead. It's for everyone to be able to ask questions.
Yeah. Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
Been watching you for a while, following you, going to the REI Club and everything. So really appreciate everything you do for the whole community, and look up to you for the leadership. I think that you and your others, other teammates of yours, co-founders, that you guys are like putting out there for us. So I just wanted you to know that I just literally before this call took you up on your one of your offers for your
for the tenant screening.
Yeah. So
awesome. So you're going to get all the papers and all the documents.
I just signed up for it, and
Nice.
I just wanted to encourage everybody else, if you guys are interested. You're offering. Well, I'm assuming you're offering that. Offer.
It's definitely available. There is I wasn't necessarily going to sell anything on this, but thanks for. So basically, it's the tenant screening process, and like all the details with all the papers that I use in the documents, essentially. So you have access to exactly what I do.
Yeah.
And if you have any, so we're going to have like 3 live calls as well. So if you have any questions specifically, you can get the one on, or like the small group stuff. But awesome, Mark.
I just want to say, I think it's like, quite honestly, when I saw what you were offering, I thought it was like amazing value. Can I tell them? Can I say what it like?
Sure.
What? Yeah, it's like
he's advertising for you.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. That's good.
Well, yeah. So I mean, I think I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was somewhere in around like close to the 200. And you were offering 50 off or something like that.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, something like that.
Value. I'm not necessarily looking to make like $1,000 off of it. I just need people to be able to protect themselves. That's all. Yeah,
no. So just wanted to say, hey guys, that I think that's a great offer, and thank you, Sarah, for doing that. And I hope others take advantage of that. So there we go.
Thanks, Marco.
Yeah, that's really good to know. Maybe Sarah, if you can email me afterwards, and then I'll like send the link to the group so that if people, because like that, like everything you told us, like I don't know, guys, don't you think like I did not work to this level, and I was just like, people need to know this. It's just
because we don't have a lot of control, right? Like especially if we're buying in Ontario, the LTB is very skewed to tenants. And if you're going to rent out a place, like really, here's how you're going to get your place back. If they don't pay rent, I mean, obviously if there's illegal stuff and like you can, file, but usually you're going to get your place back. If they don't pay rent, you're going to go through the board, which takes months and months. If you do an N12 or an N13, so either if you move back into the place, or you need to renovate, but even if you need to renovate, they technically can get first right of refusal and come back at the same price. And I know that the government's increased their fees and their fines for any landlords that abuse that. So if you're like pretending to move back in or pretending to do a reno, they're closing in on that a lot more. So then it goes back to, let's just really do a good job on screening. That is our control. And when we also have to be careful not to get in trouble with human rights and stuff like that. So, if you are ever going to turn away somebody, even if it's like for not enough pay or they don't make enough, just don't even give them a reason. Like even if the reason is valid, like you can say no on credit as an example, don't even give them that reason. Just say, I'm still reviewing applications. And I will let you know if you are the chosen candidate, but I'm still receiving and taking in applications. And then once you have your person, then like, again, don't give them a reason. Just say, unfortunately, I just have one property. I wish I had 10 and I could give them to everybody that applied because a lot of people applied. But if you want, I can keep your information on file should something else happen. And usually when you do that, you're giving them a little bit of hope. And they're like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to like completely kibosh my opportunities. If there's something else, maybe they can reach out to me. If you don't like them, just leave it at that. Just that. And then you're going to be fine. I see a lot of people getting in a lot of trouble by saying, oh, well, like I need to have like you to make 30% more to cover it. Or I need, I have not enough bedrooms. You have too many people in your family. Like just never ever give them any of those reasons. Like it's just gonna like potentially get you in trouble. Like even on the Facebook stuff, like Ontario Landlords Watch or Landlords and Tenants of Ontario, like there's different groups on Facebook. and then you see like, certain tenants even posting, I applied, and then they said no because we are 6 people and there's 3 bedrooms. Like, that landlord shouldn't be saying that. They should just be like, I will contact you when it's available, or I will contact you with the next steps. No one is ever going to say you are not organized. You should be going, I'm going to sue you because you're disorganized. No one's going to say that, but they're going to say, how dare you, tell me who I can have or not have in my unit. How dare you discriminate against pets? How dare you discriminate because we don't have an extra 10% of income? So you're going to get in a lot of trouble if you give them a reason. Even if you're like, this person rent striked and you have proof, don't even bother going there. Just say, still reviewing applications, and then you pick somebody else. Unfortunately, you just have one. And it's, or even if and you're like, I hate that tenant that decided to rent strike and I know he did, who cares? Just, unfortunately, just don't let them be your problem.
So just so I'm clear, Sarah, you said if you decide on somebody, you said you tell them that you only have 1 property left, and that you'd keep them on file or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But is that somebody that you kind of as a backup, or is that somebody you wanted, or is that somebody you're saying you don't want?
That's somebody I would not want. So
Okay,
so
gotcha.
if I only have 1 property, and I think it'll explain a little bit more too in the actual different steps. But if you don't want them and they have already applied because they passed step 1 with advertising, they passed step 2 with the phone screening, you went to there's 5 of them that went to see the property, and you had 2 favorite ones, but they're like the 4th down on the list.
Yeah.
And they still applied, I wouldn't even start running their information. So if you've got 5 applications, I usually just pick my top 2 and I run their applications. I'm not going to pull everyone's credit for nothing. I wouldn't want to ding everyone's credit, but I'll start with my top 2. If they, reach out to you from Kijiji, or you might give them an email, that's not your actual first name and last name email. You can just let them know that you're still reviewing and taking in applications. And then when you do find somebody that's somebody else, like your first choice or your second choice, and they were your 4th or 5th, I would just let them know. Because if you said, okay, well, you didn't like some of their answers, or when they gave you proof of your May, June, July, as an example, bank statements, and you can see that not the rent wasn't paid in full, as an example, and the other people were, don't give them that reason. I would just say, you know what, I'd love to rent it to everyone. I'd love to have 10 extra properties to be able to offer, but I only have this one, and we've actually went ahead with somebody else, not for any reason specifically, but we just have to pick somebody. And you were great. So if you want, I can keep your information on file and let you know if something else comes up in the future.
Gotcha.
For any reason that you are like, I don't like them, even if it's credit, you can say no based on credit, but I wouldn't even go there. I would just use that line.
Makes sense. It's just always better to keep it vague, and because you don't want to get them angry for no reason at all too, and then give them a grudge for nothing.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things that it's better to play the disorganized card, or the very slow, I'm a slow person, than to have finger pointed at you because you've given them a reason. Now all of a sudden they're angry and they're trying to take you to the courts.
Yeah, it's good advice. So can I ask you a question about the so I think we said if we get them out with the reason that we need to renovate it, they have first right of refusal, right? But how does that work? Does that mean they have to go back to LTV to get their first right of refusal? Does that mean they have to, if there's an 18-month backlog, they have to wait 18 months? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, likely. I mean, it doesn't happen. So it doesn't happen often, but let's just say, for example, you're in a 4-plex, and one of the units is way under market rent, and you just go in and you just do some painting, and then you reset the market rents. I mean, if there's a way that they find that out, they can file the board.